Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Thank you all for joining. Welcome to InRhythm's Quarterly Summit. For all those who don't know me, I'm Parag Katkar. I'm the head of consulting practices at InRhythm. And as a part of InRhythm's Quarterly Summit, we are hosting a series of hands-on interactive coding workshops on some of the latest technology trends. And today we are hosting the sixth workshop of this series, which is from our cloud native app development practice. A little bit more about the summit. So learning and growth is an important value for us at InRhythm, and the thought leaders at each practice area in InRhythm identify the latest industry trends. They plan on weekly lightning talks on these trends. And at the end of every quarter, we host a quarterly summit where we go over the summary of the technology trends for that quarter or any new technology trends. And we do hands-on coding workshops to learn these skills where we discuss our learnings, we share our knowledge on how you can apply these skills to the products and platforms that we're building. And I'm really excited for today's workshop. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ted to go over the agenda for today's workshop.
Hey, thank you, Parag. I'm Ted Parton. I'm our tech community evangelist and have also been a lead software engineer here at InRhythm. So for today, we're going to look at integrating gRPC with Java. And our schedule for that is the first 5 minutes here. We're just doing a quick intro, but then we're going to do a short lightning talk about gRPC, just kind of introducing you to the concepts of it, what it is, and just how you do some pros and cons, that sort of thing. And then we're going to take a little bit of time to do some lab setup, just in case you haven't already been able to do that lab setup. And we'll post links again in the chat for anybody as we get to that section. And then we'll take a break at about 1:50 or about 1:50 to 2 o'clock. And then we'll come back for a hands-on lab piece. And the hands-on lab is really going to be the real neat, fun part today, I believe. So in this, you're going to start off with getting your environment. After you've got your environment set up, you're going to pull in some code. You're going to write some protocol buffer files, which gRPC uses. And then by the time we're done, you'll be able to have a service that's talking to users and their user notes. So it should be a really fun and exciting lab, I think. So I'm glad you're all here, and let's get started. Quickly, an introduction to gRPC. And in this this little talk here, we hope to go over what is gRPC, what languages are supported, and what does a protocol buffer file contain, as well as how we use gRPC with Java. So gRPC was put together by Google. And if you look at their website, they say it's a modern open source high performance environment for remote procedural calls. And I really like the second quote down here where it was talking about it was initially created by Google for a single general purpose RPC. And they open sourced this in 2015, but they had been using it for a little bit before that internally for their systems. And even today, they're using it on their backends like crazy. And they're doing hundreds of millions, if not billions, of processes each and every second. So it tells you it's very high performant. Anyways, so what did all that mean on the previous page? Well, simply put, we can define a service once in a protocol buffer. We can then generate a client and server from that based on our gRPC compiler. That is to say, and I'll show you here in a minute, a protocol buffer file, you go in and make your definition of your contract that you want to use for your services and your clients. And then you compile that down into that native language and can implement it into your language in your environment. So like with Java, so we could have a client that's working in, let's say C#, and it could talk to the client in Java and not have a problem. So speaking of languages, here's a list of languages that it supports. As we can see here, we got lots of C. So you got C#, C++, Objective-C, Java and Kotlin, of course, Go, PHP, and so on. So lots and lots of support here. Okay, so what do our protocol files contain? So typically it's broken into services, messages, comments, and enums. There's also a little bit of setup beforehand where you set up like what your syntax is, but we'll see that in the workshop later on. But just real quickly, our service is what we're actually defining that we're going to do, right? So for instance, if we were creating a user service, then we might have a method here that is get all users. And so you'll see that's denoted as RPC inside this little service syntax here, right? So RPC is this remote procedure call, if you will. And then so we tell it what our request will be, the get all users request, and what it's going to return. So the request and the response here are just messages, which we'll see in this next slide. So again, if we were going to get user by username request, for instance, we see in here that we put in the username field, and we put a number here, this one here. That is the position of it, is how, as part of how gRPC and proto buffers get high performance, is they indicate exactly where each field will be at. So in that case, username is at value 1, and in our response, we're going to have a user envelope message. And that's also going to be at position 1 in that response message. Now, the user envelope is actually going to contain more details, things like username, user type, a user ID, a first name, and so on. Now, for simplicity's sake, in here, I made most everything strings, but as mentioned earlier, you can do enums. Enums do get a bit tricky with gRPC, and if you want to use them, I would really highly suggest that you dig into that a lot and do some research on your own pros and cons of that. But everything I've read suggests that can be a bit tricky to pull off. So one other thing I'll note on here is I did not run into a actual data type. So even though I have a placeholder for date created and date updated, I decided to go ahead and make those int64s, and I'm just passing in the epoch date into these guys and doing the translation back and forth. Okay, so one reason I did the user envelope here is because in my get user by response, and also a get user, if we went to a previous one, the get all users response, in both cases, I want to send back users, right? And so I decided to be more effectively to have one message that represents the user, an envelope, if you will. And so in this particular case, we're only sending one, but in the case of all users, then we tell it that we want to send back multiples of the user envelope. So it will automatically generate a list for us. All right, let's look at some protocol file to do, or do's, like things you want to do with them. Okay, so it says here, so if you're going to do an enum, you want to include a default value. It wants you to use, or it says you should use well-known types and common types. And actually, if you were to go to this URL I have down here, it has a whole list of those, what those are. Let's see here. Then you want to use, you want to reserve your tag numbers for deleted fields. So in particular, with those tag numbers we saw, like with the 1, the 2, the 3, if later on you're going to go delete those, you need to really keep those numbers safe. Don't use them again, because your client may not have your updated package yet, and they may have problems deserializing if you don't. Okay, so let's see. Do follow our style guide, and it should do stuff like this Java outer class name should follow the style guides here as listed. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the lab itself, because you'll see the Java package come up. The bigger list of things is these do nots, if you will, or don'ts. So again, it's going to say do not reuse a tag number. Again, it messes up serialization, or deserialization in this case. And it says do not change the type of the type of field. So, you know, like if the field was string, don't change it to a numeric all of a sudden. It could cause problems. Let's see here. You do not want to make a message with a lot of fields, but by lots, they mean hundreds and hundreds of fields, right? You know, I think most of us would agree, we rarely have messages where they have lots of fields like that, but you know, 20, 30 fields are probably fine. You do not want to use C or C++ or macro constants for enum values. And then things like you never want to use the text format message for interchange. And the reason here is because it's not future proof. It may not be safe. And that's just how you're doing your message interchange here. There are a couple different ways to do your message interchange. So just saying, don't go with that method. We'll skip on to the next. Okay, so what are scenarios where gRPC is recommended or where it really shines at, right? So this would be things like microservices, right? So where they're going to be very low latency, have high throughput communication, that's going to be a great place for that. A point-to-point real-time communication, gRPC has excellent support for bidirectional streaming. In fact, that reminds me, I forgot to tell you guys, gRPC, one of the great benefits about it is it was designed to use HTTP2 from the beginning. So it's taken full support HTTP2, and that speeds things up dramatically. If you've got a network constrained environment, a gRPC messages serialization and protobuf might be a good option there. Because it's going to be smaller than the equivalent JSON, as it mentions there, because it's going to compile down to binary. And your inter-process communication is also another great place to consider using gRPC. All right, let's look at some weaknesses, right? So one of the biggest weaknesses is that when you're trying to test this out, there's very limited or very few web browsers have support for HTTP2 features completely, right? So it makes it a little bit harder to test some of these packets out. The package that it generates tends to not be human readable since it's going down into binary. And so additional tooling may be required to analyze. But there are tools out there to help you with that. So in fact, we will talk about one a little during our lab called CRUD, which is a GUI client, very much like Postman, and it will help you out with the debugging. Let's see, and in this case, they do recommend some alternative frameworks for some of these scenarios. Things like when you're going to have browser accessible APIs and broadcast real-time communication. Now, it just occurred to me, this is funny because on the previous slide, we were talking about in some communication cases, it is really good. All right, so it does have the streaming capabilities, which is really, really handy. Right. And by the way, those pros and cons came from Microsoft's website. Let's see, using the gRPC with Java. So this is just a quick guide to like how we would get just high level how we do this. So we're going to define a method and compile it, and we're going to define a profile of our service that we want to make, right? Like if we want to do our users and we want to get our user, we want to get all users, we want to get user by name, that sort of thing. And then we're going to tell our system to compile those protofiles down, and it's going to generate Java for us. And it would end up showing up into our generated sources folders. So you can configure this with Maven or Gradle, or you can actually do it from the command line yourself. So in our examples later today, I've actually configured it with Maven. And so you'll be able to pull that in and have Maven help you with the compilation. So in our protofiles, we need to include a couple options when we're working with Java, and that is the option of Java multiple files set to true. And that's just going to be how we split out when we do the compilation. So like in the example earlier when I was showing you those services, it's going to end up causing it to create a class file for each of those services or each of those methods that we created. And then we have option Java package. And this is where we're going to tell it what package we want everything to be in, to be aligned with, right? So those are very important. And then we're going to, you need to build the implementation of the generated services. So all that to say is the protocol compiler will end up building out these classes for you, but then you need to implement them. You may want to have, custom logic in there. You may want to override certain features. You may want to talk to the database like we will. So that's where you're going to implement those pieces on your own in your own code, right? Now, if accessing a gRPC request, you need a gRPC server, and we'll set one of those up for you to see. And if you're going to communicate to a gRPC server or an API, you need a gRPC client to talk to those APIs. Again, all pretty simple stuff. And lastly, here's some useful links. And like I said, the site to go to is this grpc.io. They have tons of great information. And also the protobuf.dev site also has tons of information. So both of those, again, are related to some Google initiatives many years ago. And they're both fairly intertwined because, I mean, you're going to use these protocol buffers for defining your packages in the gRPC. And lastly, I'll point out again that CRUD is a great little GUI client for using to test these packages out. Postman and Insomnia are adding more gRPC support, but they're still lagging a little bit behind. But I expect they'll catch up pretty soon. So, just quickly with the lab setup, and I'll post this into the chat room again. You're going to go to our workshop here, this InRhythm workshops for CNA, that's Cloud Native Applications, and then Intro to gRPC. So there are a couple prerequisites you'll definitely need, and that's going to be a tool to do some coding. So I recommend IntelliJ. Any screenshots I have in here will be from IntelliJ, but certainly you can use something else like Codium or Eclipse. You're going to need Java 17 for today. So if you pull down our code examples, because I've used Spring 3.0 on this, and it does require Java 17. Now, I recommend what had been OpenJDK 17 or Adoptium's version. It is maintained by the Eclipse Foundation, so I recommend that one. And then you're going to need Maven installed. And originally you needed Docker, but we have actually modified this earlier today, so you don't need Docker anymore. You can connect to a database we have set up for you. And then there's one last requirement, and that is you will need a gRPC compiler. Hey, Gladys or Tariq, can you, were there any gotchas you want to warn people about?
Hello, everyone. Hi, good afternoon. I'm facing some issue with the latest code. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Then I need to set still the gRPC compiler you said, right?
The gRPC.
Yeah, I mean, let me know if we can check what it has so far. Okay, then what I did, okay, I download the repo. I run Maven client install. According to Maven, the build is successful. But anyway, I have some compilation issues in the view. I don't know why. Okay, just checking that. And for Postgre, I set up Postgre locally and create manually quickly the tables. That I have done so far.
You're good so far. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Gladys, and we'll work that out in a little bit. Okay. So also, as I mentioned earlier, we originally were requiring Docker. We were going to have you install a local instance of Postgres database. If you'd like to do that, that is now listed as optional, and you can do so. I know I believe Gladys has done it, and a couple other folks. And you know, if you're wanting to play around with like Flyway or Docker at all, you might want to look at doing this anyways and pulling it down and just kind of running through that. It can be a fun little experiment and give you a good little playground to play with later. And if you want to skip it today, that's fine too. You may want to come back to it later, especially if you're interested in looking at Flyway for data migrations. So because we utilize Flyway as part of that to load up the data. So Garrick, how are you coming along with getting everything going?
I didn't do it, just I double checked that we are able to install JDK on our client laptops. Yeah. So but I'm going to do it now.
Yeah. So yeah, I think as long as you can download it and then you can place it in a folder, then you should be okay. Because in your IntelliJ project settings, you'd be able to go into the property or into there and tell it which JDK you want to utilize. In fact, let me see if I can move to sharing the whole screen so I can show that. Or see if I can share a different screen. How about that? Okay, go to the project structure. Just FYI, if you're as you're getting set up, once you have the project brought in, right? If you go to your project structure, there's an SDK setting, and so once you have, let's say, this installed in a folder, again, you don't have to install it as the main Java for your computer, right? You could just have the JDK in a folder, and then you could have it selected here. So for instance, I have version 11 because I was testing this with 11 yesterday. So this was the project, and then SDK, and you can edit. So it'll usually find it for you automatically, but you can add in an additional, right? You could go here and tell it, like you can even download in a lot of cases right from in here which version you want. So we could say like 17. We could get like Amazon's or any of these others. So the Amazon probably would work. I just had gone with one that was I've used a lot in the past. Right.
Hey, Lotte.
Hey.
I have a question. Can you please go back to IntelliJ?
Sure. Give me just a second. I will do that.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, I have a question. You did, I mean, we are in the time that we are setting up the environment, right?
Use to set up the environment. Yes, this is the dev. This should be what dev looks like. Let me refresh just to make sure it's not showing anything.
Okay, but if I have a question. In the package, I have one package called gRPC. I believe, yeah, I have a package common, yes. I have the package JPA, yes, but I also have the package gRPC.
Okay, you were helping me test some stuff earlier. Did you switch back to the dev branch, or are you still?
No, to lab 2. You say lab 2, right?
Yes. If you can switch back to the dev branch.
Okay, got it. Okay, nice. Thank you.
Yeah. You were getting a sneak peek, right? So I asked you to pop ahead to test something out. So we will. Let me just show you guys. So we are going to have a lab 1 and a lab 2. So but we're starting here at dev, right? And then we'll go into lab 1 and lab 2. And so what Gladys was talking about is like as you were in lab 1, then she started seeing some additional pieces. Actually, I think it was lab 2. There was a gRPC folder. Oh, but I got to go into it here. So, but we'll get there. So yeah, you're going to have a gRPC folder eventually. We'll flip back to dev for now.
Ted,
Yes.
I tried to build the project. One of the tests is failing.
Okay. Do you see why? Do you want to share your screen or?
I can share. I didn't dig, just maybe because of the time. Okay, let me share my screen.
It may be connecting to the database issue. That would
maybe. It looks like some tests related to database. Yeah, user access resource failure. Maybe connecting to database. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, and how recently have you pulled down the code? If you haven't pulled it down in the last, I'd say 30 minutes to an hour, you should re-pull it down because originally, we were going to have you talk to a local database instance, but now it should be connecting to a shared database.
I just pulled the code. Yeah, maybe my network doesn't allow me to connect to a database. That's also possible, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's a possibility that something in the network could be causing.
Do you see it?
Oh, okay. Yep, I can see it. User no integration test. Yeah, unable to acquire the JDBC connector. Yeah, so that's your problem.
It's maybe because of network. It's possible, you know. But
Sure. Another way you can test this is you could install and it's probably already installed, but open up the database plugin. Yeah, I see it onto the right-hand side of your window. If you go to the database side, and you could try connecting directly. There you go. So you could create a new connection. Yeah, data source, or yeah, it's going to be Postgres. Oh, you know what? You've got that certificate piece. It's probably not going to allow it to go through. You're probably right. But if you want to try it though, I'm sorry, I should have had you also open up your application properties. The connection string is in there. Yeah, and so you could take that data source and that username and password and be able to connect. We just use those into the database settings that you were working with there. Let's see, it's going to be Postgres. If you want to type that in, maybe.
I can't find
It's
it.
up at the top. It's at your recent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There, that's just the name. So you don't have to put in you don't want to put
That's the name. Yeah, you are right.
You want to call it. Yeah, so your local host, put that in. There you go. Oh, but you want to remove that JDBC part because if you look down the URL below, then it replicated it. So you just want the IR-CNA, I think, all you're going to need. There you go. So say if you want, I can actually open mine up and share the screen and then let you type in if you prefer. So.
I can type in like this. Yeah.
Then yeah, and then so you'll put in the yeah, you get it. There you go. And then on down there should be a test connection. Oh, you're missing the driver also. That might be your problem. It says here you need to download. There you go. I think you're probably running into some issues on the MasterCard network.
Should I in this URL remove JDBC Postgres, or it's okay in URL part?
You want it there in the URL. That's right.
I want it. Okay. Yeah. So let me try again if I'm typing the password correctly.
Oh, let's also change. Well, it'll change for you a bit, but I was going to say we'll change the database to be note taker with a capital N, capital T.
No taker like this.
Note, N-O-T-E. So.
Like this.
And an E. There you go. Yep, like that. But you need an E between. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let me try the password again. Okay. it's complaining about the URL, not the password or whatever.
Hey, check and see if there's a period at the end.
No.
Okay. Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
It's twice.
Yes, got that on there twice. Okay, I think the way to fix it is to go back up there to host, the host area,
Mm,
maybe.
it looks like it is trying to connect.
Okay, good.
Give me 1 second. No, it's
Okay,
yeah.
and the host there, make sure you don't have the port included towards the end.
No, what is report? 5432.
You see where it says port 5432? But click back
oh,
to the.
Here.
Yes.
But it has a port here. Well, why do I need to add the port again?
No, I was saying make sure it's not on that.
It's not that. Okay. Looks like this is network issue. My network doesn't allow me to connect.
Yeah, if you're on a VPN, you're likely not going to be able to connect to an outside database.
Yeah.
Or they
I'm
may
on
just be
VPN.
specifically, yeah, then you're probably not going to be able to do that. I'm in the same boat on the Health First VPN, so I'm just following along and taking notes, and I'll probably try this again when I've got some time on my personal computer.
I'm sorry, guys. If you and I know you probably can't on the MasterCard computer. I was going to say, but if you have Docker or can install Docker, that could be your way around it. Is to follow the directions on just running a local database with the Docker. But like you said, Garrick, or they're on the MasterCard computer, you probably can't install that.
I'm trying the last time. Yeah, I think I'm not allowed to install Docker.
Okay. Oops. And let's just open that up. So if you're going to run in locally on Docker, you're just going to want to uncomment this part here for local. And it's going to have your default username and password. And you'll want to comment out the AWS portion. So, all right. So Garrick, so you can't get the database going. So you're not going to be able to do that part. You guys can do some coding. Let's see. So I tell you what, we'll take a quick 10-minute break, and then when we get back at 2 o'clock, then Mr. Tarek, I hope you'll share your screen and start helping us work through the code samples. Okay. And for that, we will be going to lab 1. If you look at the bottom of the README on the screen we were sharing, you will see that it has a link to lab 1, and it has all the pieces we'll start working through. All right, everybody, I'll see you in 10 minutes. And like I said, this is the hands-on with gRPC portion. And so in this lab, what we're going to do is we're going to define some user profiles. So again, I guess I should back this up. The application we're trying to build here is one that would save notes with a user. So at the very most basic level, we're going to have 2 tables. We have a user table and a note table. And in the code that you downloaded earlier, it has entities for the users and the notes. And for those of you that were able to get the data connected to the database and get your unit test running, that unit test actually connected to your database. It created a temporary user and deleted it and just verified that it can talk to the database. So now here in our working with protocol buffers, what we're going to do first is define a protocol buffer file for the user. And you're going to come in here and set up the request message, the envelope, and the service as part of this. And then towards the end of this, we will compile it and get that operational. So if you haven't already done so, please go to lab 1 of the README section and the README at the very bottom, and I'll also post it into the meeting chat here. It will bring you up to all the steps that you need to do. And then also, so this should be a great interactive learning opportunity. Great. Tariq, can you share your screen?
Yep.
Great. We'll let you be the master of the keyboard today.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, so if we look here at our lab instructions, the first thing we want to do is to create a file called, and you could change the name of it, but this is, if you go with what we have set up here, it'll, everything should work real smoothly, but it's going to be called gRPC _user _srbc.proto. And you want to do that into a folder off source main called proto. So you don't want it in your Java folder, but you want it at the same level as the main. So if you right click on your SRC, let's see which branch are you in. Be sure that you're in the
This
dev
is
branch.
completed. Should I switch it to dev?
Yes, please.
So now, okay. We don't have that proto folder. Oh man.
Let me double check my notes. Maybe I typed it in wrong earlier, but let me double check my notes here.
Proto.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it's on the same, it's in main. I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. So in main, yep.
Just a question. Why don't we specify it in under resources folder? It's protobuf files.
That's a good question. You know, when I didn't actually question that myself when I was investigating how to do this. This where all the samples I saw were actually over here in this location.
Well, actually, why I'm asking, because in our current project, we are also using this proto, and it was defined under resources.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I imagine you could. It may be that you would then have to change something about the way you compile it.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, it just indicated that you did not want to have it into your Java folder. Okay, so now what we want to do, Tariq, is first we want to indicate the syntax for this. So I type in syntax equals, and then in quotes, we were going to use Proto 3, which is the latest version of the syntax. And just 3, there you go, end quote. And you need a semicolon at the end of the lines. There you go. And actually, if you want to jump back to your markdown, you can actually copy the next couple lines. But the next one we'll put in a package, and then we'll also add a couple options. There you go. I think the package and the Java package can be different, but a couple of things I've read suggested that they can cause it. Most places recommended against doing that. but it also, I never got a really good reason as to why it's a bad idea. So in this case, we've made both the package and the Java package the same. Have referred to this as the TNT engine, because again, I'm calling this the note taker engine, if you will. So that's good. We got that in place. So we've got the beginnings of our definition. So now we want to define how we will look up our users. So we're going to have build out. Well, actually, one thing you may want to open up here real quick to just look at is if you do down in your Java, you can go look at the let's see, the user DAO. I believe. Yeah, there you go. And then
to interrupt, just one reason what I'm thinking, why not to go to our standard packaging, maybe to be able to differentiate which classes are kind of generated, which are manually written classes. And this can be kind of a good idea, because otherwise there is some temptation to go and start manual editing these generated files.
Yeah, so it should end up putting them in the generated section in the same as your Java. But that, yeah, you could be right. That could be the reasoning. Anyways, back to this DAO really quick. So I just want to show you. So like we have a method to get all, and if you scroll on down, there's a get by user, get user by ID, and there's a get user by last name, and so on. So we would want to, whichever ones of these we want to expose, right? We would want to create that in our user service, that proto file, if you will. So in this case, for our lab, we want to do get all users. So we'll get back a list of those users. And then we want to also get one that's by the username. So if you go back to your proto, and so that's, why in the lab we started off with this. But eventually, not in this lab today, in our labs today, we're not actually going to go ahead and do the create or the delete. But that would be a great thing to add later on. Today, we're going to just focus on actually just getting some connectivity going, and to be able to see that we're talking to the database, we got the packages, and just get working with gRPC. So what you want to do now is you either want to create a message or the service. It may just make more sense from our standpoint to start with the messages, like defining what a request will look like and what a response will look like. So I would type in a message. That's a keyword in a space. And then now you would name what you, and this is basically like what you want the message to look like, right? The packet, if you will. So you want to do this, and we'll call this one get all users request, and let's do a capital G on the get as well too, please. And the reason you want to do that is because we're going to end up with a method, a class that's named after this, right? So it'll make it a lot easier. So, and then so open paren, or curly brace, I should say. And then if you, this one we're going to leave blank. So you can just put a closing curly brace. If you want, you may want to put a note in to tell yourself why that's the case. You can put it in between there if you want, or above there. And proto files use C style comments. So yeah, just a // or in our case, it's also a Java style as well. But here we are intentionally leaving it blank because we really don't need to pass anything in, right? But you could imagine we would have to pass in credentials, if you will. But in this case, we don't need to pass anything because we're just going to request everybody. Right, and then so. All right, so we've got our request. So let's go ahead and define what our response will look like. We'll again do a message. and get all, it's going to be the same name, get all users, except in this case, we're going to say response instead of request. And from when I was looking around at some of the best practices, I was seeing over and over again people suggesting that you use the same kind of naming convention, right? So I get user request, I get user response. Even if you have something that could be reused multiple times, for instance, originally I thought about calling this get a single user response, right? Because if we were to go get, if we had a message that was like get user by ID, we would still only want to return one user envelope, right? One response, right? But from what I gathered reading and looking into stuff, that it just helps from a debugging perspective and any future changes, right? If for some reason we wanted to add more data in the future, it just makes it much cleaner to have a pair here, a request and response for each of the methods you want generated, right? So here in our message for get all user response, let's actually say that we're going to use a user envelope. But before we do that, let's put in a keyword called repeated. And it's all lowercase. And so what this means is that we could have multiples of these, right? So in other words, like it could be a list back to us or a collection, if you will. And then so a space after repeated. And then we're going to say capital U user envelope. So I did that all in camel case. So there you go. And then you want to say in lowercase below it. So basically just think about like when we're declaring something, that's our type. We're going to have another message called user envelope, right? Let's go back up to that line though, please, Tart. And now let's give it a local variable name, right? So now let's say user envelopes, like we're a lowercase u in this case. And then do a plural on here. So let's say put an S, yeah. And then equals 1. All right, so what we have just done there is we say, okay, in this message at position 1, we're expecting there to be user envelopes, and it's going to be a list of these, right? So now we can come down and we need to create a message called user envelope, where we're actually going to define what goes in that, what a user looks like. Right?
Do I need a semicolon there?
Oh, yes, you do. Good call.
And
if you want, you could go in and copy some of this out of the markdown if you like, or if you want to type it out, that's great too. Scroll on down just a little bit.
User envelope.
Yeah, there you go. Right, so now you've got that defined. So perfect. So now all we really need to do now is create a service definition. So again, you can copy that, or we can just type it out however you want to do it. Right below there. Great. So now we'll have a service called user SRVC. And we've said it's a remote procedure call. We'll put in the RPC, and we say get all users for the class there. And we've said we expect to get all users request as our inbound object, right? And we said get all user response as our outbound response. And so we have our basic proto file now. So this is great. So we're almost done actually here. And we'll talk again just a minute. If you look back at the user envelope there. So we've got, again, as I was saying earlier, I just made these really simple in this case. You can do more complex data types. You have various like N64 and 32. At some later reading I did late last night suggested that there may be a date type available. I just wasn't seeing it last week when I was first working on this. But you'll see here, I also have the keyword optional on things. And the optional just means like, it's okay if that element is not there, right? And there's also an option for required, but back in one of the do not things that we read about earlier, it said if you mark something required, never ever unmark it required, because it can cause problems with the deserialization. So in this case, though, I really took it to mean as like username is the one thing I really need. I probably should have made that required. But these are the different positions they're going to be in, right? So if we ever were to decide for some reason later on that we want to remove user type and we removed it, we would never want to use position 2 again, because you know, we don't know if clients that would be talking to us might still have that in their package. They may have an old proto file, and we don't want it to cause problems. But if we were, you know, and then let's say we had removed user type, and then we added, you know, password in here, for instance, and we made that tag 8 or position 8, then we would, you know, we wouldn't set that to be 2. We'd only want it to be 8 at that point. So these become very important in the way it compiles things down and how it serializes and deserializes. All right. So now let's see what our next step is. So our step 3 back in our instructions is to define a lookup users by username. So now it's just going to add to the same proto file. We're going to add a different section. We're going to add another message. This is like get user by username request. Tarek, I think you can click on that little square icon. It'll copy both for you. And then you can put those in there. Yeah, perfect. So now you've got that. And then also we'll want to create a request for those as well. And also you'll see some reuse here, right? So this get users by username, we are reusing the envelope at this point, right? So that's another reason to put that into an envelope, is that we can use that definition in multiple places. And something else, I didn't do it in this case, but you can have nested messages if you want to, right? Like I said, in this case, I thought it would be better just to define them externally to each other. Okay, so if you go back into your README, there should be a spot where it says service right below that. There you go. Just copy those. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So good job. We've got the 2 services that we wanted. This one again is going to see, is that the right one? That is get all users and get user by username. Oh, I see. Okay, let's go back up to our service section earlier. Sorry. We only want one service section. No. Back in your source code. We only want, I should have made that a little bit more clear. You can actually delete this whole definition here if you want, because we've got it down below now. But basically, we only want one service section in our proto file. And so scroll down. And you can see here, we have both of the RPCs defined inside that user, or inside that service section, right? So we've got our get all users and get user by username. Perfect. All right, so now we can move on to the next part, which is create our note proto file. So in that same proto folder, we'll create that file. You can copy the file name there if you want, so you don't have to type it in. Tarek has created a proto buffer for user, and we use proto buffers to generate our remote procedural calls. And so now he's about to create a proto file for our note service. So I think Tarek, I think you can actually, if you want to, just copy this whole thing in, just for expediency, and we can go over it if you want after you get it posted in there.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to scroll back up, we'll talk about it again. So very similar to the past one. Again, we have the syntax being Proto 3. We've got our packages, again, what we're going to have this all built out to. We've defined our service. So the services will have get note by ID, and which will be a UUID, and we have get notes by user ID, which will be the user's UUID. And then on down here, we have defined the what the request and the response looks like. Again, we got to get note by ID request and get notes by user ID request. And we have responses. So here you'll see, actually, I didn't go back and fix this pattern, right? So I told you, like, originally I was thinking like, hey, you could have a single note and a multi-note, or I was saying single user and multi-user. And I'll probably go back later and change these up to the recommended practice. But as I was saying with the users, I found towards, I guess a day or so ago, some of the best practices kept saying that you should name your request and your response with the same beginning. So if it's like get notes by user ID as your request, then you should also have a get notes by user ID response, just to help in the longevity and so your code isn't quite as brittle. So here we're actually not following the best practice, and I'll go fix that later. But in both cases, you'll see that we're actually using note envelope over again. And in the case of the single one, we have exactly one that's coming back. And in the case of the multi, we've told it repeated again. And so again, repeated tells us we're going to get a collection or list back of these items. So we'll have, potentially coming back. And then also, Nikhil, since you weren't here earlier, all these numbers by stuff. So like where we see in the note envelope, where we say optional string ID equals 1. So that is the ID of the record and of the notes, and it's going to be in position 1. The reason I said it was optional was because if we're creating a ID or creating a note, then we wouldn't have an ID, right? So that would indicate we're creating. And then on down, we have the note itself is a string and it's in position 2. A note type, we could have emuns for this, but as I was reading more and more about that, a lot of people were suggesting that maybe you try to avoid them, that they can be rather tricky and troublesome in the prototype, but you can do it. So in our case, though, I decided just to keep it a string. And one thing we could do later on, I didn't have time to play with this, is that you can add in all kinds of validation with these proto files too. So to help you ensure things are there. And they also have an option like called one of, so like where you could provide a list of options that it could be and suggest that it has to be one of those options, right? So that could be really handy in the case of like a note type, right? Because we may say, okay, this needs to be one of like a note or task or reminder, whatever we've defined those to be.
It looks like they have a behavioral way of defining the schemas, right? I think repeated here at line number 41, it means maybe it's a collection of note envelopes.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what that is. So it'll end up, if we were to later, when we see this, when we get some data and we get it back, if it was rendered to JSON, it would look like a list, right? So you're right. So it'd be a collection, right?
Correct. So if there is no optional prefix at line number 47, it means that, does it mean that ID is required?
That's the way I took it, but as I was reading later, there is actually, I believe, a required keyword. So I'll have to look a little bit more into that, but that's a great subject to go do some research on. Yeah,
great. Looks, I mean, this looks very clean. I mean, definition.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen with this is, later we'll compile this down, and it's going to, when we send our packages, like when we're serializing our pieces, our data is going to become a binary to be transferred back and forth. So our data packets will be way smaller than they would be in JSON, right? And then also this positioning is going to help the Proto-C compiler build out for us our target operating or language, right? So we'll get one going into Java. So it'll be really nice. It'll build all the base classes for us, and then we will do our own implementation in a little bit.
Yep.
So, hey, Tarek, thank you for getting that going. So our next step in this first lab here is to compile our protobufs. But before we can do that, we're down step 5, step Y, is we need to configure Maven to help us out with some of this. So a couple things we want to do there is we want to copy those properties and open our POM file and start making some edits in Maven so that we can compile this. And so there's your properties on line 18, I think it was. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, yeah, I would put it towards the bottom there. Wherever you want to put them, find that. There you go. And then, so we'll want to go back and add in dependencies. So we're going to have some dependencies on IO gRPC. But what you just did there by putting in the properties, for those who don't know, you can reference these as your version numbers on down, so which is really handy. So that, you know, like with Spring there, like we're using Spring 3.0.4. And so we may have a few dependencies that require that, or the gRPC version. And by having them up here in the properties, we can impact, it's basically just setting a variable, right? And we can change that for several of the dependencies. Okay, Tarek, can you go back to the markdown, and then we'll copy the dependencies. Just go down, there you go. And then we'll go down to the dependency section. I would just go towards the end of that if I were you. There you go, and insert after all that. Oh, no, you don't want it right there. You want it, it's going to be after that one. There you go. Don't want to mess up our XML. So, all right, let's see. So you just, if you want to scroll up a little so everybody can see what you put in. So here if you scroll to this, you see one that says gRPC dependencies, and that'll be the beginning of what you added. It's going to be above line 102. Let's see, just up a little bit more. We got a little bit more. Okay. All right, so there you go. So there, line 81. So the first little bit here, we have our dependencies that we need for gRPC. So we have there Netty we're using here, and you want the shaded one. We're going to tell it that we're also using the gRPC protobuf on, I think it's line 89, right? And then on below that one, there's the gRPC stub. And we'll run into these stubs and the protobufs in a little bit. The Netty comes in important with our server that we'll set up or the client. And then also you need, for when you're using Java 9 or higher, you need this or this annotations API from Tomcat. And then on below that, we started putting in a few other ones we needed. Since we were using Spring 3, we needed a few additional pieces here. So we've got our Java X annotations. We've got, no, here's a plugin I'm using that actually makes things a little bit easier, or I say plugin, a project called a gRPC Server Spring Boot Starter. It's not actually by Spring, but it uses a lot of Spring pieces in there and just makes things a lot easier to go with, and in particular with our server and client pieces. And so we'll scroll on down. And we got our protobuf. And so that's going to help us. We're just telling it which library we're using with our protocol buffers. Again, Google started a lot of this. So it's going to say there, com.google.protobuf. And so next up, I think we will want to add in to the build section. We're going to add an extension that will help us sniff out the operating system. And then we're going to add in some plugins. And the plugin is going to help us compile our protocol buffers into Java code. So now, if we didn't add in this plugin piece, let's see, Tarek, you may want to just copy a little bit of this at a time because you have a build section and you want to keep the Spring Framework one there. So yeah, let's copy the extension. over, and then you'll want to add the plugin to the plugin sections. But this is going to be before the plugins. There you go. So if we were to not put this into the plugin to compile for us here, we would have to go to the command line and do the compilation ourselves. But by putting in this extension and the plugin, whenever we go do our Maven clean and build or compiles, we can have it automatically compile the protocol buffers for us. So Tark, if you want to go back and get the extra plugin there, it's going to be, yep, there where it says lab, -- lab. Yeah, there you go. And all the way, just get to the closing tag of plugin. There you go. You got it. Perfect. You're doing an excellent job on the keyboard, by the way. Thanks for playing the keys. All right, so, and then if you scroll over a little bit, you'll see that we've got over here some OS detected. And so that's what that that extension we installed earlier was doing. So it's going to help us determine where we should, what operating environment we're compiling for, right? So if we're on Mac or Linux or Windows, right? So it'll be cross operating system. All right, so that's great. And Tarek, did you end up installing that protocol buffer compiler earlier today that we figured out we needed? So because I was telling everybody, in addition to configuring it here, you do need to have a copy of the compiler installed on your operating system. And I need to go back and add that to our notes. The funny thing is, I actually had that in the notes, but then I thought it was not needed. And so I apologize for that. So if you type in proto C here, and I think -- version, I think we can tell if you've got it installed. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so you can close that up if you like. And so we can just go over into our Maven section on the right hand there, and you can do a compile. You may want to clean first, since I think you were in the other branch for a little bit. All right, let's do a compilation, please. We'll say big bucks, no whammies, right? All right, perfect. So now if you go all the way to your left-hand side and scroll down over there and below the target, there should be a generated sources. Perfect. And then there's a proto buff that's been created, right? And you can expand those out. And so that was all generated for us. Here's going to be in the packages we want, right? And so that was something I forgot to show you guys. Is like in one, I called it node model, and the other one we called it user. But here are going to be all our pieces. So we have it defined out what it looks like. Get all user requests, they get all user response, our user envelope, our user service. And we're going to utilize those in our upcoming lab, in lab 2. So perfect. Thank you, Tarek. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions you want to ask, or does everything seem to make sense? So, Tarek, do you want to? You can close the lab 1 markdown if you want, and open up the lab 2 one. Or yeah, I'm sorry, you could have just clicked on the link in there, I guess. Yeah, there you go. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to make implementations of the code that we generated, right? Let's go ahead. Let me see here. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes real quick. Let's go ahead and create a new branch. Tarek, I forgot to have you do this anyways. You didn't create a branch called Lab 1, did you? Which is it's fine. It's fine. You're fine. We can stay in this branch. Let's go here. Let's start a implementation of the user service. So I want you to, if you scroll back up on your left-hand section, Actually, there's a couple things we can do here. Just scroll up, please. Okay, hold on, just go down just for a second here. I'm going to go ahead and point out something that will catch us a little bit later. So in the target, that the generated sources you see is kind of orange in color. So we're probably not, it's not being exposed to our application at this time. So if you can go into the project settings, and let's see, that'll be file, project settings, I believe, or structure, that's it, yep. And then you want to go to modules and go over and click on sources. You see underneath where it says name TNT engine. All right, so if you want to expand on down where it says target, click expand that. No, in the middle, sorry, yep, there you go. And then right click or click on generated sources, and let's make that blue. So just click on the name generated sources, please. Yeah, let's see, just highlight it. There you go. And then at the top, it says mark as. You see that up above where it says users, target, dev, between language level and mark at, it says mark as just below that. Yep, so click on sources. Okay, so that's going to say everything in this folder is a source and it becomes available to us.
One more thing, maybe you need to fix this language level too.
Yeah, I would change that to 17 too.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. And then, okay, yep, perfect. Excellent job. So, okay. Now that we have that, let's create a new package called gRPC.server. Of our, yeah, there you go, down into off our main COM example TNT engine. Right click on that.
New package.
Yep. So a new package. Then gRPC dot server and hit enter. Perfect. If you want to, you can go ahead and create one also that's gRPC.client, but we can just stick with server for now. So that'd be great. And then so inside that, let's create a Java class called user SR. Oh, sorry, wasn't finished.
Our
Yeah.
user service.
Yeah, SRVC. Yeah, or I mean, you could call it service if you want. So yeah, refactor, and there you go, rename. Perfect. All right, so now let's go ahead and say, or in our, oh, yep, you can do that, that's fine. Okay, so let's say that extends, and then, yep. And then capital U, user, SRVC, that impl base, yep. You see how it suggested it for you? Perfect. And above that, let's also give an annotation of @gRPC service, capital G. And service, there you go. And we'll have to import, I bet. So
Well, it doesn't want to import it.
Yeah.
Maybe do I need a
Hold on a second, let me look at I don't think you're missing anything, but I could be wrong. Let's see here. I'm bringing up my version of the file right now. And let me see if you have to import anything. Oh, okay. Yeah, you got to do a import. Actually, you know what? Refresh your Maven sources. Like if you go over to Maven and you click on the envelope and tell it to download the latest. Yeah, there you go. Or that one. Yeah, yeah. Just make sure you download the and maybe refresh, and then it should pull it. It should offer to pull that in. But it's going to be from import from net.devh.boot. It's one of the ones we added. One of the dependencies we added just a few minutes ago. It just and then so you'll probably have to import it once it's finished getting everything. There you go. Perfect. All right, you're doing great. Okay, so let's start off by defining a method to get, or actually before we do that, we may want to do some logging. You can copy this out of the README if you want, or out of the Lab2 gRPC if you like. But we have defined here a logger and a connection to our DAO. And also a constructor is defined. So see, you're going to go down a little bit further. There you go. Perfect. All right, so we'll probably need to import a few of those items, but otherwise we should be good to go. That's going to be the SF or the SLF4J. And the same one there. So there you go. And there's on. Okay, so I called this, this is actually just going to be the name of, I had named mine in the example user SRVC IMPL. So you just want to say user service. It's actually the name of this class, right? That you've got it. So I think you called it spelled out service. So yes, no biggie. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So then after that, we're going to create a private method called get epoch day. And that's going to help us ensure that we have, you may want to just copy this out for expediency, but what it's going to do is we'll pass in a target date and a default date. And then if the target doesn't exist, we'll get the default one, and we will return the date, the Java local date, back as a long, so that we can talk back and forth with our packets in the expected format. So there you go. Excellent. We just got to bring in those libraries there. Sweet. Great job.
Mostly on the return type.
Oh, yep. It's just going to be long. So we're just converting our date to and from the epoch date to make that easier to put in our packets. So that's what we're going to use that for. So next, what we're going to do is actually we're going to override our get all users. So if you want to do like a public void, there you go, on down below that. And say get all users. So they're going to be, yep. I think we need to do an override. We're going to override the existing. And then you may want to copy this out because what we need to do in our inputs is we'll say get all user requests. You can type this in. Capital G, yeah. So the request, in this case. And we're going to name that, yeah, like that. Or request. Actually, if you want to follow along with the way, just in case we copy stuff in, I would name it just request. Okay, perfect. And then a comma, and then we're going to pass in a stream observer. So we're gonna, even though we said void here, like on returning stuff, we're actually going to return stuff through the stream observer. And then we're going to put in the type here of get all users response. Goes inside the greater than less than. It's going to be a capital G. There you go. The response. Yep. And you probably get to import your stream observer library. Perfect. Okay. Actually, Target, do you want to just go copy the insides of this and we'll talk about it? Scroll on down. Great job. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is this is the one where we're getting all users and we have no input, right? So there's not really any input to go look up. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a builder for the get all user response. So whenever the gRPC or the Proto-C converted and made all the classes for us, they put in builder methods. And this one, we're returning back a collection, as you might remember, because we can have one or more since we're getting everybody. So we'll start a response builder, and then we'll actually do a for loop over our users, and we'll use our user DAO to get everybody. So if you see here on line 50, I believe it is, we have for user, we're looping over the results of get user DAO. Oh, I wonder if this is an old one because I thought I corrected all the typos. I must not have though, my bad. We're going to do the get all there. And then inside there, we will create a user envelope. And we are populating the envelope with the current user stuff, right? So we set the user ID, we set the user type. We could, again, it's using a builder. If we needed to, we could have just defined the builder out and then done some conditional logic. In this case, we weren't really skipping anything, so we just chained it. So there we have the set user type, set username, and so on. I will say on the set user type, it's going internally. If we were to look at the user object, we actually are using an enumeration for that. So you see I'm using user .get type .get code. And that's just us pulling that code from the enum type, if you will, which we could open those if you want to. We're going to set our last name, so we're just doing our basic call to getters and setters, right? And then there in the user, in the set date created and the set date uploaded, we call that get epoch method that we mentioned earlier. And we're indicating what those are going to be. And we said in the case of the date updated, we're actually giving it get date created in the event that it's null. And this just to solve, and the one reason there is that because when we create records in the table, the way it's currently set up is that it will actually automatically populate the date created, but on the initial insert, it puts a null in the updated. But we wanted to avoid any issues later, so we have it go ahead and give us a value of at least what the date created was. So then last we do a build on the envelope, and then we put that envelope into our response builder on line 63. We see response builder that add envelopes or add user envelopes, right? We say that's this user. This is our user envelope, right? And then so on below that, then we are ready to complete our response. So here we say the class type to get all user response. We say response is response.builder, right? And then we're going to say on our response, what is that, observer? So I think we must be missing some piece. Let's maybe I missed something. Let's see.
Private field.
Oh, is there a private field missing? That might be it. Let's see here. I don't see it. No, fun doing stuff in real time, right, guys? So what we're going to do there, then, once we have that worked out, is we will actually put the response into the on next, and then it'll be all set and ready to go. Let me see also if I can include some of these in my local. Let's see here. And I'm also looking at my local, seeing if I can get it to. I mean, you know what? Go up to your Maven and click on the reload icon for just a second. Down below where it says Maven, then there's a recycle icon. That may take just a moment. Looks like you still got 3 issues, maybe. Let's come on down. Let's look at back when you define response observer and just make sure it looks right. So that's in your method, or when you're defining your method at the top. Oops, not at the very top, but at your get all users. Yep. Okay, they're on line 45. So let's scroll over.
Oh, is it just this parameter?
Yeah. So we need to call that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, response observer. Let's do that. That's why. Teamwork, man. All right, perfect. All right, so we have our first method there, right? Let's see here. Okay, let's next, let's go ahead and add a get user by username. If you want to, you can just go copy that out of the README. I said README, I actually mean lab2-gRPC. Anybody's following along? Just click on those dot and the squares up there, the whole thing. All right, and then we'll talk about this for just a minute too. I know you'll probably have to import a few pieces. Oops. So again, we will start with creating an instance of the response builder. And then I actually did a little test here on the username to check if it was empty or not to try to send back a response. So you can add some own custom validation right there and determine what you're going to send back. And then we have an else. And then in this case, we're going to look up the user. And remember, this time we're actually getting a request in, like someone is sending us a bit of data. They're sending us a username. So in this case, we call our DAO and we do the get user by username. And then we check to see if that user is null or not. If it's not null, then we're going to create a response builder for the user envelope, and we will build that. And if it's not null, then we'll end up putting that into our response observer on next to return it. But if we didn't find it, then we have a custom message in our else string on line 102. We're saying no record found in the database, indicating what that is. And then if we scroll on down just a little bit, we have we can optionally populate this on completed, and that's just like something you want to have happen if things completed out, right? But we'll just leave that empty for now. So now we're good. We've got this whole bit done, but let's look at creating an integration test. And we won't walk through all this one. So, but what you can do, Tarek, if you go back into your the Latitude gRPC, there's a hyperlink in there to copy where you can get our integration test from our repo. And so if you want to just go out there and copy and paste that in, then we can do that. We'll just create the file. So yeah, just copy that guy. So you don't want to go create that in your test section, of course.
Same package as.
Yeah, I would go ahead and just make it just for keeping things in sync. I would create the same package. So that'd be gRPC.server. Oh wait, you're creating a class, by the way. You were talking about doing a package. I think you're going to be one up too high though.
Within.
You want to be within the com example. There you go. Mm-hmm. All right, let's create a new Java class, and we'll call it a user service integration test. Perfect. And then if you just want to paste in what we copied, then we'll probably need to so now I may have references to user SRVC that we may need to change to be user SRVC INPL, and you may need to change those to be user service since we had different naming on that. Let's see here, what else we got? Let's see, what else you maybe need?
The scroll up to the first line, and there's something error in the top.
Yeah. You want the Jupyter on the imports, by the way.
Oh.
On the test, it's fine. Jupyter is the one replacing the classic JUnit. So it's like a what is it? JUnit 4 maybe, or no, 5. Let's see here. We get something wrong in there.
The imports.
Oh, I see. I don't think you erased some of the stuff you had there initially.
Okay.
you may, yeah.
Most of them, I don't need all those.
Yeah, you just duplicates, right? And then so at the, we may need to check at the bottom too to see if you have extra open close. Let's see. Yep, extra close there. Yep. All right, even look for any more problems. So basically here, we're just going to go through and we're going to see if we can access that those methods we created, make sure that's looking fine. So we'll do a test get all users, right? And a test get user by ID. Oh, we got an invalid declaration. And if everything runs correctly, we'll get a couple of greens and we can check on those and we'll see some results actually even. Like if you click on the get all users where it's green and you. Yep.
Hey, Ted.
Yep.
One small question in between. So are the integration tests bound to fail when you run for the first time?
Some of this was a difference in naming. Tarek named his service different than what I did in the lab itself. And so then we that impacted the name of the of it in the test, right?
Oh,
so I guess what we could have done is just gone back and renamed the service to be the same to match, right? So that may cause some problems as we're copying code in and out. But in general, it shouldn't fail. But you know, when we did add in those dependencies, you definitely have to bring those down. That was one of the issues we ran into as well. Now, this test does require the databases running. So if you're running a local instance of it, you will need to make sure that your local database is up and running, whether or not that's in Docker.
Your Amazon, my machine was not able to connect with the Amazon instance.
Yeah. In that case, are you on a client computer or at MasterCard site? Because
my own machine, but I tried with the Postgres also. Since Postgres was not working, I changed it to MySQL. I spinned up my own Docker MySQL and then connected with my MySQL. So the tables are created, and also this is happening. But the select query is not working because I'm using an older version of MySQL on Docker. So I will change it slightly in order for it to work. So I was just thinking.
Well, I was going to say I haven't tested it with MySQL. I was testing it all with Postgres.
That should mostly remain same, right? I mean, as long as the JPA tags are.
Yeah, most of it is just pure straight SQL. There may be a couple things that are not, but most of it is pure SQL.
Got it. All right, no worries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but you know, we may have to change the dialect as well, right? Like there may be a dialect setting since it's using a little bit of Hibernate in there as well.
Yeah. So something is specific to the Postgres here. Those references I will change in my local. That's it, so that it will get it working. But I just needed a confirmation whether the integration tests are working or not. So you said it should work, then I will make it work.
Yeah, it should work. And if so, originally you may miss me saying this earlier. Originally, it was suggesting everybody use Docker, but then realized that some folks may not be able to use that because, like at MasterCard, you may not have access, or different client machines you may not have access to install Docker on. So I set up a Postgres on in AWS earlier today, and depending on when you downloaded the repo, I changed the default database connector to go out to AWS. But then we found that some people were having trouble on their VPNs connecting as well. And that's what we think it is right now, is a VPN issue, just not allowing the connection through.
No worries.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if you want, we can always work a little bit later and help you get that installed later on if you like.
No, yeah. I should get it working. I mean, it's just the query that is failing. Otherwise, the tables are all created in MySQL, so that should be good.
Perfect. Way to go. Okay, so here we see some logging out. I just had it log out all our users here so we can see those are there. Let's see, we also probably have a test by get a singular user ID, which would also, but I think this tells us enough that we're working. We've clearly gone to the service. We've connected to the database. We've got a response back. So we're doing great. So our next step from this will be to set up, let's see, the note service implementation. So this is going to be a different markdown file. So it's going to be, if you go into that one, though, I think there's a link to it at the very bottom. I know, go back into number 2, yep. And by the way, all these are in the asset folder if you also want to see them there. So yep, setting up our gRPC, right? Right, in this case, so I think Tarek, you're already on it. We're going to create that, yep, the note service. And if you want to, just for expediency, we can copy these files in. I think, again, looks like I kind of booked this up to talk about it like in the previous one. So, yep, so there we'll define our constructor, a logger, in case we need to log out anything. All right, and then you want to go get the get note by ID method, I believe. Oh, you know what? You need to do extends on your method or your class there. There you go. And so it has looked to me like it creates a impl base on all these. So that's a, you can use that anytime you're doing your extension. I think you're all good there, Tarek. So things I would just point out here in this, in this case, is very similar to what we did in the previous. We're going to again create our envelopes, the same pattern, right? Where we have a note envelope, and we're either returning one or returning many. I will say in this one is something I'll go back and fix later, but on the dates, I did not include a way to do a default date. So, it could potentially have a null here on a null error on line 36. So we'll go back and fix that later in our example. But if that were to be null, then the to epoch date would throw a null pointer. But beyond that, it looks good. And actually, we do not have a unit test for this yet. But our next step, if we look at our back in our document, is to set up our gRPC server setup. So we're kind of going through this a little bit fast. If anybody wants me to slow down and talk about any of these pieces, we can do so. But this piece is, by and large, very similar to the user one. We just need to make sure
we get notes by user ID.
You want to have one that's get note by ID and get notes by user ID. So as long as we've got both of those, then we'll be. Yeah, and so so one of those we'll pass in, just like it sounds like, and say, like one of our users was Fred Fletcher, and so we would pass in his user ID, and we'd get back what notes are related to Fred, or if we passed in user ID Captain Ledger, then we'd get these back. So. All right, we'll go to our server setup. And this is where we're going to define a gRPC server instance to be listening for the requests, right? So the first thing we want to do is, let's see here, we're going to create this, see if I give you a file name here. We're going to call in the file gRPC server.java, and it actually says here to download it. So if you want to go download it, I think there's a, if it's hyperlinked, I think it's hyperlinked if you look at it there. Yeah, you can copy it or download it into your piece there.
Maybe copy is slightly easier.
There you go. Yeah, so yeah, we can go into that if you guys want, but you know, really just want to get onto the fun part, right, where we see it talking back and forth. You need to see in there too, gRPC server. There you go. And yeah, select all and then copy and paste. And Control A. There you go. Let it scroll up. Yeah, great. Okay, we don't have package in there twice. So if you want to scroll down, though, we can look at some of that. So if you look there, I've defined a default port. I think there's some libraries we got to pull in or correct, right? It was just user service. Yeah, there you go. If you go back up, we'll talk about that a little bit. So let's start there. So again, a logger for any logging we want to do. We've defined a default server port, a 9090, which is usually the typical one for gRPC. It can be something else. And that's actually in our property file as well that you can change out. Let's see, we auto-wired our DAOs for notes and users. Let's see here, our constructor, we're passing those in. We can pass those in as well if we like. And then we've got a main method here, which is going to try to start the server, which is another static method in here. So if you come down, then we are catching and rethrowing a couple different errors there that we could encounter. So the start server piece, though, and we're going to check to see if we're ready. And then we're also going to start an instance of the server using the server builder. And we tell it for which port, right? So that goes back to our gRPC server port that we had. We tell it which services we want, right? So in this case, we're going to have both the note impulse service or note service impulse and the user service. We could add in others by doing another .add service. And then how long, you know, we've done here like permit, keep alive. There are a few other options we could add in as well, but these are the basic ones we want for our instance. And then we'll do a .build on that whole builder pattern again. And then we will do server.start to start up our server. And we're going to call this from our file called TNT engine application in a few minutes. But this is just a few other methods here to let us set some items. And we'll see that come into play here in just a few minutes. And our is ready was just a custom check to make sure that we have our DAOs defined. So when I was playing with it the other day, I was running into some issues where occasionally they were not auto-wiring. So in most cases, you'd want to maybe pass those in, but you'll see how we implement it in the TNT engine application here in just a second. Let's see here. I'm going to look at my notes to see if I give you any warnings. Oh, I know the only warning I had in here was like if you didn't want to do the note service, like if you'd skipped over it, then you'd want to comment that out. But before we, our next step is actually to go to our app config and make sure we've got that configured correctly. So we're going to add a couple of beans. We're going to make sure we have the user service defined and the note service. you want the Spring framework version there. Yeah, there you go. And then instead of user service endpoint.
I have a question. Well, why don't you declare this user service as a component that we are declaring in configuration?
I can't remember. Maybe I did. I think I was just playing with this initially. So, I mean, you could do it either way. Either way would be fine.
Yeah. Thank you. I thought there is some specific reason because of what I asked. Yeah.
Let's see, we missing.
I had to reload and then it suggests.
I got you. Yeah. Okay, cool. Great. We got that taken care of. And then we want to go into that TNT engine application, which our Spring Boot initializer created for us initially when we were building the Bootstrap. So this is where it was actually originally executing everything at. Let's see. So in the TNT engine application, we want to add a few private items if they're not already there. We need to make sure we have access to the user DAO. I think they're already there, but we can, if you don't mind going up for just a minute, we'll take a look. If you want to, yeah, just go ahead and get the new body for the command line runner section. So what we're going to do is go in the command line runner section and add a call to our gRPC server now. So we'll just there where it says to do initialize, we'll just replace that. I don't think you need the whole, well, yeah, it's fine. There you go. And so our gRPC server is, these have static methods, as you may recall. You may not have noticed that, but so we don't need to declare an instance of it, but we can go ahead and set our DAO to make sure we're passing in right, our user DAO. And then we can also passing in the port. If you look above on line 43-ish, we're checking the environments to see if we had a different port passed in, right? And then if everything looks good, then we'll tell the gRPC server to start our server. And we should be ready to rock at that point. Let's see, so it's looking pretty good, Tarek. And then, Tarek, did you tell me you ended up getting the Crya GUI set up? Is that right?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Well, if you want, I can show it working from my local, or we can, if you guys want. There's also I have a couple of Java client files we can look at where you can see it kind of running as a client. But I think it's more fun with the GUI because we can change things in and out. But if you don't have that installed, how about if I share my screen in just a minute and I'll show that working, okay? Let me flip back to, whoops. I got the right thing going here. All right, so I'm going to share desktop 1 here. Let me make sure I have GitLab 2. Okay, I'm just going to do a clean compile, make sure I've got everything right. Okay, so we should be good. I'll run the test also just to be sure. Okay, looks like that's good. Okay, so now what we need to do, now that we have that server, I'm just going to start the engine up from here inside IntelliJ. So I'll go here and run that. Here Spring Boot is booting up, and it's got the gRPC on the port. Pull that down, and then what I was talking about with the GUI is this guy. So now we've got, and I went in earlier and I defined, what I did basically is imported the proto files. And that helped me, let's see if I can show you guys that real quick. So I think it's here in the importers. You can come in and you can do a new import. And so I had specified a proto file and I imported these guys. And then it read that and it created these pieces for me. And I was able to come in here and give it some information. So like I can do the get all users, right? And as you can see, it's pretty darn fast. And that's actually talking out to AWS even. And then so I can, so this is all our users. Right? And so, in fact, if you look back in the original code, you'll see that T. Parton was not there as a user. I added myself in at AWS earlier today. We can take the user ID, you know, like we just had that user ID here. We can search, it's already in there. This part I think is neat too. I'm not entirely sure how it's doing this, but here at the username, and can everybody see this, by the way? Are you guys seeing my screen where it says CREA and I'm showing username and stuff? Anyone not seeing it, I should say. Okay, sorry, I was looking at something else. Okay, so I'm going to look at one of the other users. So let's just start typing like so like the gunslinger, right? Any Stephen King fans out there? So I hit send and boom, here it is. And we've got him going there. And then so I'm going to copy this user ID. Oops. And also I want to show you guys something else real quick too before I get out of here. Is you can look at your headers if there were any. You can set some trailers, but this trace I find very interesting. Like you can see all the trace details of where it makes the call back. Call to, so call start at 3.043, every request start at 3.043. It established, message sent, it stopped, and the time difference between those and the time we received it. And yeah, just very incredibly nice and fast there. So anyways, I have my user ID here now. And I'll put in this one for the gunslinger. Send, and boom, I got 2 notes back, right? So you can see one is about the Dark Tower series and who is by, and this type of note. Then we have one here, this type of task, right? And again, those dates, as I was saying earlier, we've put those into longs. And then also if we had the node ID, like I have this one here, we could go and look up by a node ID. Here's a note that we had earlier called California Dreaming, and it's got a different user. We're not sure what it's interesting that the user ID didn't show up there. So we need to go back and look at that. See one that didn't show up. But it should, yeah, it's not showing up here either. So that's something we need to work on our output. We probably just didn't put it in the envelope. That's probably what happened. But we can now see like that was the same note. Again, we could easily come back in here and get a whole different user. So like we could get Fred Fletcher. Bonus points if anybody has heard of Fred Fletcher besides me and can tell me about him. I'll say it's with a very fun set of books. So now we got here Tales of Fred the Vampire by Drew Hayes, and that is the very first book. And the second note, it says Fred's adventures take place in Winslow, Colorado. Let's check to see if that's a real place. Okay. So yeah, all this work that we did, that Tarek's done, it all comes to this really. Like that's the really big payoff, I think. So yeah. Thank you guys very much. Yeah, Garrick's got a question. What's your question?
Yeah, I have a question. So how are we exposing our endpoints of gRPC, for example. I mean the documentation, for example, for REST APIs, for we have Swagger file in case of gRPC, how we are exposing, how documenting it.
It's a great question. So when we created the server service instance, it took care of that for us. Right. So, and we just to tell it what the protos were like, let me see if I can open up the service for us. So, but yeah, you don't have to go in and do the traditional definitions like we are used to with REST clients, right? So in here, we added our services, and that's all I registered, right? And then when we what we did, or what I did then later, is I took the proto files, right? Sorry, I probably should have kept that up. So to get into here, I took one of the proto files and I imported them. So, and in fact, I could probably take that out if you guys want to see, but it's already grouped them for me as well, right? So like it put the note, it said, hey, you're in this package, right? And then link those together like that. And then let me see, I think there were a couple other settings I had to do over here. Let me see if I go the wrong place. It's in, I'll go full screen again. In the environments, I did set up a local environment, and you can set up different ones. And let's see, I feel like somewhere, I can't remember if I actually had to put in the host or not. I did end up adding in host for a local host, and I didn't put any user specific. Well, I was playing around with this, but I never fully got it to work. But I was thinking like you may be able to put in common things you want to search for. I bet you can. I probably just haven't utilized it correctly yet. But like if you're using Postman or Insomnia, you can often have data points defined that you want. But I created that local host. You can create authentications if you need to, or certificates. You can also default settings, right? So I came in here. I do remember I came in here at one point and I put in localhost. It doesn't seem to have saved that out anywhere. I'm not sure why it didn't, but I had come into gRPC and I said localhost and told it whether or not I wanted TLS enabled. Again, you got the modes you can pick, and I will say for our examples, I did a simple unary gRPC. There are some more complex ones, like if you want to do streams, but I just made ours work very similar to what a REST call would look like for us, or a typical HTTP call. And that was pretty much it. Let me see. I feel like there was maybe maybe one other place I made some changes. So you can come in here and change this. Like if you wanted to do a different package, you could come in here to your proto file and say, which one of the packages you wanted. But it's reading all this from from the definition itself, and you can choose whether to overwrite that.
So we have to provide to our clients just only the proto files, and proto file is actually kind of our documentation, kind of our Swagger file.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there, like you said, you would think there's some place where you have to tell it the destination, right? And I was trying to remember exactly where I found that at. Maybe, oh, here we go. Here it is. In the settings, I came in here and said 127, or so this points to my local host, right? So local host port 9090. So I set that, right? And then, so once it's there, though, the server service is just, it sees that there's this remote procedural call that's coming in, and it just knows that the procedure call is this method. So we didn't have to define a path or anything, right? So we have a unique procedure call name, and so it knows what that is and executes it. I think it's great, and so I guess you would end up actually segmenting those by your packages, right? So you could have those in packages, and you could have multiple gRPC servers running, right? It wouldn't have to be just one, but you could have multiple ones running. So, this is of course a very simple case. It might be worthwhile to play around with, or maybe as another workshop or something like that, to see what we run into with multiple RPC servers. So, cool. Any other questions? All right. So, so as we are starting to wrap this up, I'm going to say our conclusion here. So ideally, you've just learned like how to set up protocol buffer files, how to configure a Java project using Maven for a gRPC to compile. You can do it with Gradle. That is possible. I've seen lots of examples for that out there. You can use this with your data access objects, custom validators if you want, custom logic. And then you can set it to continuously run like we did. And then you also saw here that I use CRUD to reach out and actually help us test and see those objects. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. And thank you all for coming. Again, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to do a little Q&A time. Oh, Nikhil, that's great that you get working with MySQL. Perfect.
Yep, work like cream.
Awesome.
Thank you. Good session. Nice.
I
It's a
have a
good
question.
representation of data, I think so. Your schema and definitions are all clean. So it looks good.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, Garrett, what you got?
Yeah, but sorry, Nikhil. Just I had some connection issue. Yeah. And what about programmatic gRPC client? Are we going to proceed or?
If you want, I can show you one real quick. Let me. I know we were kind of running close to the time, but I do have some, and they're in the repo. You can pull these down and see. Now these are really kind of more testing initially, and I'll probably move these to a test because I have these kind of hard coded to get just certain items, right? So we'll look at the user one here, right? Do you guys need me to make that bigger, or is it good enough? Can you see it just fine, or?
It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So so in here again, we're checking for our port. We're going to listen on port 9090. Again, that could be changed out. We have our static main. We have created a channel for that to send on. And we're using our managed channel builder for that. I have implemented a look all users or look up all users and a lookup by username method for each one of those. So here, for instance, in the lookup all users, we look at we create a blocking stub. So these, you remember I was talking about stubs earlier. We saw that come in as one of the pieces we imported on the dependency. So we we utilize the stub pieces that we brought in, and you know, from there, so we've got this user service blocking stub at that point, and then we're going to use that as our get all users, and we're going to create a request using our they call it new builder. It's really interesting. Like a lot of places I've seen it been like just capital builder, but all these start with like a new builder here. So we get to get all user requests new builder .build, and we return that to our get all user response. Let me see what else we got here. And I apologize. It's been several days since I've looked at this particular instance, but in this case, it's getting all the users, right? So we're just going to get it's just going to request that, right? So we're going to call it's actually already done it at this point. Because let's see if I got this right. Remember, so we did blocking goes to call it. We get
user service gRPC. Is it a library class or it's your class?
Yeah, it's let's look at it. This is just a library generated. Right?
Is it generated from based on this proto file or?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it generated this. This is down in our generated stuff. So you guys can see it's all down there, right? So it's taking care of a lot of this for us. Now, and I didn't go in and customize any of the output, right? But we say here, get all user response. Just call into that stub to get all users. We could have go in and put different pieces, but then here it goes to call the get all user method, right? And so I think that's going to end up going to our override where we define that into our user service implementation. Right, so we had our get all users. So it's going to be with that. Right. And let's go back to our client. And then we end up with that into this get all user response. If that's not null, then we are going to loop over here. This is just for us, just to see logging out. We're logging out the envelope, right? And again, this ends up being kind of a test because I've kind of got it like hard coded on here. So on this one, we're looking up by a username. I believe I've given it just a particular name. Let me see. Set username, or I thought I did. Oh, it's probably up here. Yep, here where I'm looking for Duncan, Idaho. So he's right there. Let me call down and we'll just output that guy. So let me see here. We'll just run this guy. So we're running, and there was the very last one as we did the one person, right? So we looked up Duncan, Idaho, but earlier we did where we're gonna look up all the users, right? Here we got Craig Faulkner, Jonathan Mayberry, all these guys. So just like the data we got over in CRUD, right? And in this case, we just actually called just the server we're running locally. I'm sorry, Garrett, do you have another question? Or
I'm good. Yeah, I just forgot to lower my hand. Yeah.
yeah. So again, I think especially in the case of where I'm looking up like Duncan there, you know, this one is kind of hard coded. Probably better to move this into like a unit test. But I mean, the concept would be the same though. If I'm going to go talk to somebody else's API, right? I'd build these clients. And I would, you know, we would have taken those proto files and we would come up with our own implementation, and then we would call these channels, and then go out through the stub there, right? The blocking stub to get it, and then call that to like get all users out to that, and we would have pulled it back. And we, you know, the part back up here probably skipped over a little too fast was the managed channel. So there. That channel, we talked about who we're connecting to, right? So here we're just connecting to localhost and to which port, but we could easily have said that was somebody else, right? Like that could have been a service out on Spotify or you know, Fidelity or somebody like that, right? And then we would say what port. We would, of course, in most cases, have to give some sort of credentials to authorize ourselves. In this case, we were just doing our using plain text, but we can do encrypted on the pieces. There are different options we can do with our channel. So it's just going to matter. Excuse me, and you know what kinds of things you want to do here. You know, like compressor registry, whether or not you're going to disable retries or enable them. How long you're going to do a keep alive. You've got a lot of options right there, right? Whether or not you're going to detect for proxies and so on. Oops. So, like I said, I thought the GUI was a little bit nicer to show off, really, in like when you're kind of playing just by yourself. But yeah, we did the same thing for this over on notes. It's same kind of thing, same kind of logic here. I'll put in a note user ID so we can look up just by that note in the channel. But otherwise it works, it's really the same concept. There, if we run it, so there I got the Joe Ledger series by Jonathan Mayberry. So.
Correct.
Yeah. And the other thing I've been impressed is the speed. Granted that those last couple just ran, I mean, they ran to my local host, but it's still talked to AWS for the database, right? So, so it's like very fast. So it's been pretty impressive, I thought. And I had, you know, I really had a lot of fun learning this. It's definitely been a really great learning experience. So, and Tariq, thank you very much for doing most of the typing today and working through all the labs for us. And also big thanks to Gladys for helping work through a whole bunch of the set up procedures with me the other day. Yeah. And does anybody else have any questions or anything you'd like to say?
Is anybody using this on their client projects?
It sounds like that Garrick may be using some or have seen some at work, because you mentioned something about the proto folder being in a different location, like in resources.
Yeah, just we used this proto file, but not gRPC itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been curious about this for a couple of years. So the place I've worked at before InRhythm, when I was at a company called Idemia, we had a couple of guys break off to build a microservice, and they were utilizing gRPC, and I just never had a chance to go dig into it. But I remember they had told me a little bit about it. And so now I know they were also working with Quarkus, and I haven't tried to do that yet, but they had set up a whole piece running in AWS and running, probably 1 million records a day through their system easily enough, going through gRPC. And really that part's never been their bottleneck. They've had some bottlenecks with other stuff, but it's usually like, and they're transmitting files over it. So, but it's, yeah, it looks pretty handy, pretty useful. And I'd say any place where you're trying to increase some of your performance, especially in some of these microservices, this is maybe a good alternative to look at. But there is a little bit of a learning curve as compared to, like, say, JSON, which is, anybody can look at and it's pretty human readable, and you think, hey, I can get started with it pretty quick. But as Nikhil pointed out earlier, when you start looking at the proto files and you start reading those, you're like, oh, well, this is pretty easy to read and pretty easy to follow as well. So there's just a couple extra steps, but I think, when you add in that you can have your a Maven or Gradle compile it for you, I think it helps make it a lot simpler to start utilizing. So anyways, that's all I've got for you guys. I really big thank you to everybody for coming out and taking part in this today. I really do appreciate it. And Parag, is there anything else you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, absolutely. That was done really well. And first of all, I want to thank all the participants for attending today's workshop, and special thanks to you, Ted, for your thought leadership in getting this workshop together and doing such an excellent job hosting it. So thank you. For the external audience on LinkedIn or in future in YouTube, today's workshop was a part of InRhythm's quarterly summit, where we hosted a series of 6 hands-on interactive coding workshops on the latest technology trends. And there's a lot of work that went into creating this series of 6 workshops. All of them would be available on LinkedIn as well as InRhythm's YouTube channel. And we have lots of exciting content coming up in upcoming weeks via our lightning talks. Every Thursday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time, we host our lightning talks, and each week one of our practice area consultants, they share their knowledge on the latest tech trends, which will help you keep learning and growing. And next week, Takahiro Ninomiya, who is a senior iOS engineer with us, is going to talk about best practices on finding Xcode memory leaks. And I'm looking forward to this talk, and make sure you mark your calendar for next week. Thank you all once again for joining. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all next week.